Okay, all good? Well, just like to welcome everyone here today, and I think we'll kick off by just acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're having this event on, and pay respects to the elders past and present. Also, just want to acknowledge that we have quite a lot of brain power in the room. There's many really educated people. It's almost a bit intimidating when you go through the standard of people that have come today. So, my name's Travis. I'm at the mosque now with Dr. Zach and the team, and we've just started doing employment and business programs, and we've realised very early in the piece that multicultural people do have problems with mental health, and we've realised that that's a barrier to get the job, and we realise that's a barrier to keep the job. And because we are making a long-term commitment to employment and business programs, we needed to know ourselves about mental health. So what we did is we put together a team, like an international team, with the combined social media reach of, we were talking before, when you add them all up, it's something like 10 million different pages they have of followers. Like there's 4 million, I think, for one, and I mean, some unreal numbers like this. So these guys, we're very lucky to have them. And so we thought we'd share it with the community, and we could come up with learnings for us, but maybe that could be learnings for you as well. So I'd just like to kick off by inviting Dr. Zach. No, you're welcome. No. Okay, well then we'd like to start maybe with Rob. Rob from SSI, one of our greatest supporters, and always great to hear from Rob. And of course he's very familiar with this because he runs many programs here, also with the mental health. So I'll just hand it over to Rob.
Thanks very much, and look, welcome everybody this afternoon. Fantastic to catch up with you all and to have you here at this facility. I'll start off by also acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. Well, thanks very much. I'll also note just a few key people who are here today. Of course, Rob Moho, state member for Southport, who's here with us today. Teresa Lane, of course, is joining us today. Teresa's very busy at the moment, giving council elections, etc. But she always makes time for coming to these events. It's very pleased to see you and to just want to acknowledge that support. Also, just to acknowledge Mr. Amin and also say Roman, both of them who will come today to provide their wisdom and their background and their support. And of course, I know Dr. Zach is here, of course, a good friend of SSI's and the Secretary of Slakes Creek Mosque. And thanks very much for your sort of efforts in pulling everything together today. Look, I'll be very brief, just to say that look, I'm here in my capacity as the State Director for SSI and also as General Manager for the Connection Health and Wellbeing organisation of life-changing social services right across Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. So we're very pleased to be here and just to come along today and to be part of this important opportunity. Just in terms of my background, I have a particular interest. I'm a psychologist by training and worked amongst other things sort of for many years directly with clinical clients. I spent time working in a mental health hospital some years ago, and so it is an area of particular interest for me. I did work also on something called the Brighter program, dealing with resilience and transcultural adolescence as well, a very important program to build those emerging, I want to address those emerging issues with very young populations, and having worked with some child survivors of torture and trauma, etc. In that background. Look, I think I'll let others speak today, but as we know, mental health is a very big issue in our community and something that we, continue to want to address. I'm obviously in a very good position to talk and reflect upon that, given his shadow portfolio responsibilities. I think, as we all know, it has been for many years an issue. I think there's probably more prominence being given to the issue now, and our contemporary society, but I know the core communities have particular issues in terms of mental health access and the equity in terms of that process. And if we think about some of those key issues around interpreters, issues around having the right data so that organisations like ours and others can actually undertake appropriate advocacy on their behalf and empowering communities to do what it is they need to do. All of these issues are very important, along with the workforce and actually having clinicians and others who are well positioned to be able to engage with called communities and be able to give them the kind of service that we would like them to have. So that issue of equity and the importance of those issues. Certainly from our point of view, and within SSI we run a range of programs that go to some of those issues that address it. We certainly have a called domestic family violence service, specifically tailored to the needs of that community. We run other programs in hubs, and of course we outsource to a complex mental health service as well as closely associated with this. So across a range of our programs, we see ourselves closely engaged. I think very importantly, though, the most, this is an area where we really need to be working together as service providers across government. I'll just call out there the work of certainly the work of Metro Health South and what they've been able to do over a long period of time in terms of paying attention to this really important area, the BHMs, etc. Also. Look, I'll leave it there other than to just to commend today to you, and thanks very much for your participation. I know that there's this group, and then there's another, I think there's a specific group that runs directly after this with the community members as well. So a terrific opportunity for us all to be here today. Welcome, lovely to see you all, and enjoy today.
Now, I'd like to introduce the member for Southport, Mr. Rod Mahalik. And this guy is quite a guy. He is the member for Southport, shadow member for mental health, which of course is great that he's here today, for family and seniors, so I might need seniors shortly. Also for drug and alcohol, well hopefully I don't need to send for that. And now, this is the cool thing, so this guy, he is an actual community guy. He's also a member of Common Ground, and also a long-term supporter and on the committee for Bravehearts. So I'd just like to introduce Rob.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you, Travis. And I should just at the outset just quick acknowledgement of country and traditional elders. I think it's important that we do acknowledge our heritage and our past. I also want to bring greetings from my leader, David Christodouli, who would love to have been here today, but he's been travelling pretty extensively around the state, looking at disaster management issues in recent weeks, and I think he's up in Townsville again, I think he's out at Logan and out in the west today, but he did ask me particularly to pass on his greetings. Dr. Zach, thanks for the invitation to be here today. I should acknowledge Teresa as the local councillor, and I'm a former councillor with Gold Coast City Council, so I know a little bit about how that gig runs, and it's good to see a councillor that's so connected with the community as I'm sure you are. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're seeing in mental health. I had the privilege of sitting on the Parliamentary Select Committee that did a review of mental health services across Queensland about 2 years ago, and that committee report was the catalyst for recommendations around the increased mental health services. There was legislation passed around the allocation of additional funding for mental health, and then a requirement for government to engage more fully in terms of its strategic planning and the planning of services. We heard from groups across the state, and I have to say I wasn't, until we went through that process, I wasn't aware of just how many different groups there are and how many areas across society that do have constituency that are struggling with mental health issues and anxiety, and I know that it is a growing challenge, and since COVID it's somewhat increased. There's a lot more anxiety, I think, generally around in our society, and for that matter around the world. I mean, we're not alone on this. But some of the challenges we face, of course, is that particularly in rural, remote Queensland, and even in non-core areas a little bit out of Brisbane, like the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Caboolture, I'm sure in Logan, and Ipswich, it's becoming more and more challenging to find qualified allied health service professionals to support mental health, and then of course there's been a huge challenge around the supply of qualified counsellors and psychologists in recent years. So labour force planning particularly is a huge challenge, and what we've seen in the last few years is just exponential demand on services in every sector of the health spectrum, which brings with it a whole lot of challenges. During the process of the inquiry, I was surprised, and I sort of touched on this, but I was surprised at the range of services that are out there. So we had people make submissions from groups that were supporting women, with post and antenatal depression. We had representation there from LGBT groups. We had a plethora of organisations that are supporting young people. There are other groups that specialise in supporting people with specific medical needs. Everything from sort of cancer support to voluntary assisted dying and sort of everything else in between. So it is a huge challenge. But one of the presentations I heard, particularly during that sort of 3 or 4 months, was from the head of Lives Lived Well, which is one of the major service providers in Queensland around mental health services. And they were one of the few organisations that talked about the need for prevention around resilience training. And I think as we sort of look at the challenges around mental health, it's important to think about how we can support people that are struggling with anxiety. It's important that we support people that are having mental health crisis of some sort. But I think even more so, it's important to think about how we put in place resilience training and preventative strategies that actually help people from not getting to that extreme point. Because once you sort of cross over that brink, it's often a lot harder to come back. And I think the other thing we have to be careful is that while you look at the statistics, and I'm a huge fan of the Mental Health Commission and the work that they do here in Queensland, if you read the stats, you'd be forgiven for believing that 1 in every 4 people are going to have a mental health crisis in their life and never recover from it. And the reality is that there are a large number of people that have moments in their lives where they face significant anxiety or mental health issues, but it doesn't mean that they're living with it for their entire life. It may just be a season, a transition, or a particularly challenging couple of months or a year or two where they've had to deal with some family trauma or some other trauma. But people do come through it. The vast majority of people do come through it. And so it's not like there's 1 in every 4th person walking around us in society sort of in the middle of having a mental health crisis. The statistics are actually saying that 1 in 4 will have some sort of mental health episode or challenge, but that doesn't mean that a quarter of everyone that we're dealing with, and you can be forgiven for thinking that from the way that it's represented sometimes, are all walking around with a mental health problem. That's actually not the case. There are a lot of very robust and healthy people in our society. But the other point that the Director of Lives Lived Well made at the time that really stuck with me, he said the importance of listening and the importance of making a service or your time or a person available to support someone And they'd actually done some research, particularly around young people, because they'd specialised with a lot of young people across the state, and said more often than not, and I've heard this evidence also because I've run it past people with Headspace, more often than not, young people particularly are just looking for some reassurance. And they don't always need 10 sessions of therapy, or they don't need to be seeing someone every second week for 2 years. Sometimes they just need someone that they can check in with, get some answers to some questions, find some reassurance, and then it's like they'll shrug that off and they'll feel free to get on with their lives. And so I think it's important that we're conscious of the need for very different approaches, and the fact that one size doesn't fit all in this space. And I'll close with this because it's probably one of my favourite comments, I suppose, when I talk to my staff and when we deal with constituents in the electorate, and often when I get invited out to speak to different community groups. We live in a very complex world. There are lots of challenges. We all just need to be a whole lot kinder to each other. And we all need to learn how to be more gracious and forgiving and accepting of one another. I live in a household with 4 or 5 international students. They come from very diverse backgrounds, and I love it. But I don't look at, and there's one particular young lad that's living with me at the moment. He's always going on about how he's black. And I go, mate, I don't even think that when I look at you. Just having a conversation. You need to move past that. Because we're living in one of the most multicultural and diverse countries in the world. I suspect that Logan is probably one of the most multiculturally diverse areas in Queensland. And I can actually claim the crown because at the last census, the electorate of Southport was identified as the most multiculturally diverse electorate in Australia. And that's why it's great that we've got multicultural communities, Gold Coast, and so many other service providers down there. So looking forward to participating in today and hearing your thoughts. Just Google me, you'll find my contact details. I don't hide my mobile phone or my email address from anyone. If you want my contact details, tap me on the shoulder and hand me a business card during the course of the afternoon. But thank you for the privilege of being here, and I look forward to hearing what our special guests have got to share with us later.
Thanks, Rob. Now, Teresa. So we met her recently. I met her for the first time, and she said, "Oh, I'm a counsellor." But then going back to the mosque, and Dr. Zach said, "Well, that's because of Teresa. That's because of Teresa." So she might say she's just a counsellor, but to us, it's been a pretty good relationship. So I'd just like to introduce Teresa.
That's super sweet. So as soon as Rob said that Southport had the most multicultural community in the state, I thought, no. Not a
I knew you were going to say that.
This is our word, always Woodridge, always moving forward. But that being said, one of the best things about our community is that when people start talking and having conversations around mental health, things improve. I've never been through war. I've never had to backpack my family through 2 nations to get to safe harbour. I've never had to deal with the atrocities that some people said. I've never had to dig a grave for my family members. I've never had to actually step up and feel the angst and the pain that a lot of people have when they come to this country as refugees and migrants. I had a conversation when I worked in a federal office, and this lady was from New Zealand, and she said, "Those refugees, they get everything." I said, "I beg your pardon, madam, but you flew across the Tasman. They've come across the world. There's a big difference." Now, when we start talking about mental health in our community, we are far ahead of everyone else when it comes to this. We've got SSI that look out for their people, that look out for the refugees that are coming in. We've got QPAS that has done an amazing job over a number of years to actually support people in their mental health journeys and their traumas. Part of the title is trauma, and we have traumatised people in our community. But sometimes you couldn't tell. People pull their socks up, they go to work, they buy houses, they live their lives, they raise their children, and they are absolutely righteous in this community. But it doesn't take away from their worries. It doesn't take away from their fears and their past trauma. So when Dr. Zach came to me and said, Councillor Lane, we need a space. We need a space where we can meet people and we can counsel them, we can find them work, and we can actually lead them on a pathway that actually takes them out of poverty, gives them a job, gives them a place to live. I was like, let's do it. And I actually rang him today and I was able to say that I signed off on a small office space in the library that they can actually use going forward. But it's such an important process. Travis came and said, jobs. And I said, well, here's some jobs. And he said, bring them. They're looking for people. And together as a community, we can do anything we want to because we are amazing in this space. In Logan, we smash above our targets and we always beat those targets. We go well above and beyond because we work together. We don't compete. We actually work hand in hand with each other and we deliver results. So hopefully today we get some great results out of this, and I look forward to seeing what comes next because honestly, you guys just rock and you deliver every time, so I'm so proud of it. Thank you.
Now the next guy, I guess he's like a rock star. His name is Benny Ball. Now I've heard of Benny, I was in disability employment before, and for some reason his name kept coming up. And you hear about him, and now I'm actually seeing him first time. So I'd just like to invite him from QACC, just to say a few words.
How could you miss it? You said
Thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge all the invited guests and our speakers today. Very happy to be back in Australia. Just got back last week from Africa. I just want to mention a couple of things here. This is a very important event. And most of the time I talk about embedding the mainstream system in our local communities. And this is a typical example of what I mean, embedding the system in our local communities, because we do have pockets of our multicultural communities that are struggling in isolation. There's so many of them out there, not because we do not have the resources or we don't have the programs that are really designed to meet their need, but there's a few things that we need to get right. Reaching out there rather than expecting them to come and knock on the doors. Going out to the communities and build the relationships. Relationships are so important. That would also lead to trust. And I normally say, if I don't trust you, no matter how much resources you have, you're not going to help me. But if you build a positive relationship with me and I trust you, I'll open up to you. And I'll tell you information that you did not even want to know. And the more you get that information about my life and everything, you'll be in a very strategic position to solve my problem effectively. So building relationships are so important. Building trust are so important. We are very lucky to be in this country because we've seen what's happening around the world over the past couple of years. And if you look at all of those things, I normally say you drive them to simple thing, leadership. Leadership that creates the institutions that can either divide us or bring us together. We are lucky to be here because of leaders that have built institutions that bring us together regardless of where we come from. And we need to learn from that, acknowledge that, and find a way to accommodate newly emerging communities that can reflect on their past. And the last thing I want to say is that for most of us right here in this country, either from refugee background, migrant background, is that we are not settled mentally when we get here. Usually people celebrate when someone gets a visa, when they are granted a visa to come here. But that's not the end of the story. The fact that you are here in Australia doesn't mean you are not happy, you are stable, have access to services and everything. We still have a large number of our family members, relatives and friends who are still over there. And majority of our people don't sleep because your hearts and minds are out there. And you get calls every day thinking about what could happen. And trying to look up to yourself and trying to support those people that you grow up with, because they're part of our family. Collectivist culture is every single person that you grow up with is a family member, even if you don't relate to them by blood. So you think about them all the time. That means we are not separate here. So what I would like all of us to do is let's work together, let's build the relationship, and also let's look at some of those hardships as opportunities to support those people to rise up into leadership role as well, so they can be part of decision making at every level to influence the policy development to respond to our need at all different levels, like frontline all the way to leadership level. So important. Have a good day.
Okay. Are you doing something? Doing something? Okay. Are we going slides? Okay, now we've got the speaker and we're in retreat, and then when we're finished, we'll go into groups and we'll announce it. And we will just, in the groups, we can find what we've learned from today and maybe some recommendations, and we want to take that back and implement them with the programs that we're running. So I'd like to introduce, now this guy's got a bit of
You can read it.
yeah, well, that's only half of it. So you see all those qualifications. So he's the founder, CEO, lead psychiatrist of LifeSpring. It's a large private healthcare company, also a trainer, researcher, writer, health entrepreneur. He had a Bachelor of Medicine in Surgery, then a Doctor of Medicine in Psychiatry, then behavioural, what was it?
He's Superman.
Behavioural Neuroscience, National Institute for Psychological Sciences in Japan. And I just took one photo, but it kept going for many pages. So that's just one photo. So it keeps going for like another 3 photos. So if you can imagine this guy. So without any further ado, I'd just like to introduce Dr. Saidul Ashraf Kushal.
Thank you, Travis, for the respectful introduction. Thanks to all of you for coming this afternoon. Thanks to the distinguished guests and to the lovely people. So I'm basically a psychiatrist. We work in Bangladesh, but we get to see a lot of patients from overseas and definitely from our country. And in my personal journey, I have seen more than 25,000 cases up till now. So I'm now like 39. So from that experience, I will try to share a few perspectives so that we all can get benefited. And I would also like to hear from you, because a lot of you are working in advocacy, policy, and also in counseling. I've met a few of you people, so I'd also like to learn from you today. So initially, I'll share a few case stories so that we know that why we're here. Definitely, the cases I will definitely not reveal the actual names or age, so I will just tell it, so that the confidentiality thing gets right. Okay, the first case was, I would like to name her Tanya. Definitely that's not the name, just for our understanding. So Tanya came to me in 2018. She was 34 and she had severe depression. She came to me after she tried to commit suicide for 2 times. So she was 34 and she was doing very good in her personal life. She was married to a good husband. She had 1 kid and she was doing good in her job. But unfortunately, she was very sad from inside. And when we tried to talk with her, for the first 10 minutes, she couldn't even talk. She just cried and cried and cried. And after I made her comfortable, when she started to speak, the first thing that she told us that from early childhood, when she was 8, 9, 10, starting from that age and through the teenage years. Her mom and dad both were very good students. They were like very prestigious doctors of our country, and she had three elder brothers who were doing fantastic in schools, high CGPAs and all of that. And Tanya was not like up to the mark compared to his brothers. So in our country and also in Southeast Asia, this comparison is very common. In Australia, I won't say this is very common, but in our country it's very common. It's like, you have to be like your brothers, you have to perform like your brothers, you have to be first, second, or third like your brothers. And although Tanya was a good and sweet girl, but she never was up to the mark compared to her brothers. So her brothers were always like first or second, but Tanya was, 10 or 11 or 12. And just for that reason, her mom and dad always compared her. So from a very early age, she developed a core belief that she's not good enough. So she just expressed her story in one line, her sorrow in one line, that I was never good enough for my parents. I was never good enough for my parents. So this was the core belief that she grew up with. So whatever she did in life, she went to good colleges, good schools, good universities. She's doing a good job. She was married to a good man, had a kid. Everything was okay, but the core belief didn't change, and no one told her that that core belief can be corrected. She also had another trauma, which is also like pretty common in the Southeast Asian region. Like she was sexually abused by her old maternal uncle, and she could not, express that to her mom and dad, thinking that it would make the circumstances even worse. So she kept that to herself for her whole life, just before she expressed it to me in the counseling session. So these two trauma made her like very depressed from her early teenage life. And due to the taboo, due to the social stigma that if you go to a psychiatrist or if you go to a counselor, like people can call you, mad or psycho or like weak. So she never went to a psychiatrist. But after the second attempt of suicide, not the first, the second attempt of suicide, she finally, composed herself, educated herself, and had that courage to come to me. And I worked with her for 3 months, cognitive behavioral therapy. We did about 12 sessions, yeah. And she didn't know medicine, and she's okay now. I regularly communicate with her. She's doing fantastic, and the core belief has healed. So this is a very, I would say, common story in Southeast Asian region countries, in our countries, that the trauma that was in our past life, we carry it in our whole life. So we don't heal, we don't go to a counselor. You see that medicines are not always needed, and this is the reason that LifeSpring was established. That me and Amin is there, he's a psychologist. We both wanted to, break this barrier, and this is why we choose social media and also offline workshops and conferences to do mainly 3 things. The first is to break the taboo. We wanted people to, speak about their tragedy, speak about their stress, speak about their trauma, and be comfortable sharing it. Because in Bangladesh and also in Southeast Asian countries, and in fact all over the world, it's still a very stigmatized topic. That people don't want to express that they had trauma or they're weak or they cry, and it's very stigmatizing. So we wanted to break the taboo through our online engagement. And rightly said that Travis was saying, we now have reached more than 10 million people through our social media activities. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted to tell people that prevention is always better than cure. So before you go to medicines or in conventional therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, there are a lot of therapies, EMDR and trauma focused therapy. You can learn ways that you can correct your own mental health and resilience factors. So we make lots of free videos. We have over 4,000 free videos so that people, at least in their primary or initial stage, can help their own mental health. So that was the second thing, because in our country and also in a lot of, I would say, globally, it's always about, cure. Like if you're depressed, you need medicines. If you're depressed, you need therapy. So people are more focused on that. Doctors are more focused on that and in their private chambers. But we wanted to, come out of our chambers and tell the society, like, not all of you are mentally, handicapped. Not all of you are have disorders, but maybe all of us need the support of mental health. Simply if we have an anger issue. So anger is not a disorder, but we all might have a few anger issues. And if you have anger, massive anger, you will face lots of consequences in life. Like you will probably not have a good relationship with your partner. Your kids most probably will not love you because they'll be scared. You might have issues with your colleagues in your workspace. So simply anger issues, which is not a disorder, can be very harmful for you in life. So we educated people through our videos on anger, trauma, stress, and a lot of things, and we wanted to tell people that prevention is always better than cure. The third thing what we wanted to establish is that we wanted to make people more productive or more functional. So if I go with anger, if someone has anger issues, like his productivity, hampers. Like if I go to the case of Tanya was a successful, woman, but she was depressed. And if you're depressed, you can't work like a normal guy, like a normal person. Like they bring aloof, they get tired easily, they suffer from fatigue, they have insomnia, a lot of things. They need to push themselves every day, every single day to get up and work. So if they just heal their depression or anxiety, they could function a lot better. So there's a research conducted by World Economic Forum. They say that in a workplace, if a company like invests $1 to an employee in a year, that in their mental health, that employee after the 1 year they will return $10 back to that company. How does that happen? Like if someone is like depressed or sad, like I want to tell you another case regarding this, how this works actually. A 32-year-old man came to me. He had a heart attack, right? A mild MI. So he went to a cardiologist, a heart specialist, and they found nothing like normal cholesterol. He didn't have diabetes. He was a really thin person, no family history of any heart disorders, but still he had a heart attack at age 32. So the cardiologist was very prudent and open to mental health. He referred the case to me, and although the client was very upset because he was like, I have a heart attack, so why do I need to go to a psychiatrist? And then I explained him like why you are here. And then when I took the history of him, what we saw is when he went to work, he had two personality types. Like he was very perfectionist. He had a trait like individual perfectionism. Like he always thought that he needs to work perfectly, and no one in the office is doing good. So if the office closed at 6, he would stay there up to 9 because for him, work was never finished. He was very perfectionist. And the second thing that he was very passive. He could say no to no one. So if a colleague said, brother, please, do this for me, he would say, okay, I'll do this for you. And another colleague would say, like, brother, please do this for me. He would say, okay, I'll do this for you. A family member saying, brother, do this for me. He's going to say, okay, I'm going to do this for you. So he had this passive personality. He could say no to no one. He was not assertive. And because of these two traits, the individual perfectionism and the lack of ability to say no, the passive personality, tremendous amount of stress accumulated. Tremendous amount of stress. And then when he went back to his home, he had a few issues with his wife too that accumulated the overall stress. So with these things, he ultimately suffered a heart attack. So he was going through these things for 3 to 4 years. And although he had no physical issues, no family history, he got a heart attack. An American Cardiology Association, they published a research in 2016, and they were saying that young adults are suffering from cardiac events like just as similar as older people. They were saying about 33% people who are suffering from who are of all the heart attacks, the 33% people were below 30, and all the people who were below 30 had stress issues, or they were suffering from depression or anxiety or PTSD-like problems. Almost all of them. So this is also a concern, not only for our mental well-being, but also for our physical well-being, not to suffer from stroke or mitral infarction or any kind of issues. We need to take care of our mental health. So suppose this respectful man, if he was working in a company and the company would sponsor his mental well-being. He was going through a lot. He had perfectionism. He had like passivity. If that could be resolved, then his functional ability would increase 10 times in his office. So that goes by research. This is how mental health is very important. So these are the three things we always wanted to do through Livestream, and we think it should be done by more people for the benefit of the for human beings, like to build the talent. The second is like we want to increase their productivity, and also we want to tell that not every human being has disorders, but we all need some sort of mental health support. So prevention is always better than cure. Yes. Okay. So what is mental health? It's just a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his abilities. He can cope with normal stresses of life. He can work productively and fruitfully. And then with all of these, he can make contribution to our community. So if any one of these are lacking, we need to think that we need to take care of our mental health. We don't always need to take medicines or go to like fancy, or I would say scientific therapies. We just maybe need to just open up about our cases. When someone comes to a counselor or is like stigmatized, I always tell you, because I see a lot of teenagers, 17, 18 years old, and they're like very hesitant. They might be making a few mistakes in life, or they have a lot of disciplinary issues, or their life is messed up or chaotic. And what I tell them about counseling is always like it's absolutely okay to have a messed up life, depressed life, or chaotic life. It's fine. Acknowledge it. Don't try to hide yourself. Because simply telling your story to someone who cares for you, who is non-judgmental in her or his approach, will heal a lot of pain in your life. Just like expressing your pain. So first acknowledge that my life is not okay, and it's a chaotic, messed up life. Just acknowledge it. Be true to yourself. And then let's find out the reasons, like why are you like this? Maybe you had bad parents. Maybe you were suffering from a lot of traumas or physical abuse. Maybe you had one or two, breakup issues or divorce issues. People have lots of things that we don't know. Similarly, like Tanya, similarly like that brother that didn't even know that his cause of heart attack was due to mental health issues. So at first, when you speak up honestly, and then when we try to find out the reasons, it might take 2 sessions, it might take 4 sessions or 5 sessions. We try to remain very patient, and after that, what we tell them is, now let's plan for a beneficial future. Because you've now expressed yourself, we know about you, we know about the reasons, and after you've said those things, you're now half healed, and now let's try to plan for a beneficial future. Because that's what turns on the lights. Like everyone must know that however, what kind of trauma or stress we go through, we can heal it. We can't forget our past, but we can heal it and move on. And sometimes we get this notion that time heals everything. But time actually does not heal anything. Time only gives us time to heal things for ourselves. So we need to use that time to heal the trauma, the tragedy of our life. So I'll just give you a few research findings. So in live stream, we did a few research for the last 8 years. It's just kind of a survey, I wouldn't say the research. So the childhood trauma, during childhood, 41% experiences neglect, 40% experiences bullying, 27% got physically abused, and 19% got sexually abused. These are from our clients. These data are from our clients, so you can understand like it's quite high. It's quite high, and this can be any client. They might have OCD, they might have ADHD, they might have schizophrenia or anything. But we all got this data from everyone that came to us for the last 7 years. And this is a journal that got published in Lancet. It's the most prestigious journal. We conducted the research, me and Yahya, and 2 other members were also there. We collected data from 52 countries. So it was a secondary analysis of data, and it showed that how can we reduce suicidal behaviors among teenagers in all the countries? How can parenting be improved? So they focused. We got 3 findings from all the kids and the research. The first one is parents need to understand their kids' problem. Parents, jump too early to rebuke them, like do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that. But they don't try to understand their problems. This generation is very different. Like when social media got introduced, life got very complicated and it changed a lot. It has a lot of pros and cons. But parents sometimes in South Asian countries and also in our countries don't try to understand it. They always say that we have lived this life of yours, we understand everything. But life is very different in 2024 compared to in 1990 or 1995. So the first thing is we need to understand our kids. The second thing is we need to monitor their academic and leisure time activities. So this was also very important because a few parents are like way too much engaged with their work and personal stuff. They don't even care for their children. They don't know what they do in their leisure time, which sports they like, which class they go, and they don't know nothing. So if they can monitor these activities, suicidal rate significantly drops. The third thing is respecting their privacy. This is a thing that many subcontinent parents don't do, and they kind of try to own their kids. Like he's my children, my son, my daughter. But when a teenager, when someone goes to the teenage years, like 13 or 14, they always want space from their parents because they start to develop their own identity. And that doesn't mean that they don't love their parents or they don't love their family. They just want their personal space, which many subcontinent families, don't do. So if they could respect their privacy, their choices, then the suicidal rate significantly will drop. So these are the 3 findings that we found through our research, and it was collected from 52 countries. Next. So if we're talking about stress can be categorized into 3 parts. Like we can have stress from 3 sources. The first one is the external sources. Why this is important? Because it gives us the holistic approach of dealing a mental health patient or a normal patient or a normal client. Like we can have external stress, like we can have relationship problems, we can have financial problems, we can have social problems. A lot of people who don't have resilience, they can't solve these problems. So when they come to the therapy sessions, we try to help them solve these problems. So this is the source of stress, external stress. The second is the internal stress. This is sometimes like very, I would say, not looked up in the therapy sessions. Because the internal stress is like your personality, your attitude, the way you think. Like that brother, like he was passive in personality, he was perfectionist. A lot of us are very emotionally sensitive. A lot of us have anger issues. So we ourselves create stress for ourselves, but it's not like the external environment are giving us stress, but we are creating stress for ourselves. So this too needs to be, identified with empathy in the counseling sessions, so that people can work on their traits, on their personality, on their thinking, on their spirituality and everything. It creates a lot of stress sometimes. Sometimes the stress is not outside, it's inside. And the third is the psychiatric disorder. According to DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, it's like the Bible of psychiatry. There are 652 type of mental health disorders. So, you can have both ADHD, you can have OCD, you can have clinical depression, you can have anxiety, and just depression is 18 types. So sometimes we just give us more stress by not acknowledging that we have ADHD. Like if a person has adult ADHD, it will be very difficult for him to focus, to concentrate on a topic. He will always procrastinate. He will come to the classes or office late, and people will just assume that he's lazy or he's just not disciplined. But it's just that he has ADHD, which he himself doesn't acknowledge, and his co-workers fail to acknowledge. But it's just ADHD. So when you have a heart attack or when you have a leg sprain or strain, like we can see it, so we can see that we can understand the pain. But when you have a mental health issue, we can't see it. So that's why the impact is sometimes lacking when someone has a mental health issue. So we don't want to talk a lot about psychiatric disorders, definitely, but there are people sometimes who suffer from psychiatric disorders, and they're not mad, they're not psycho. They can be you and me just suffering from OCD or something else. Just before I came to, I came to Australia, the day before I saw a client. She had OCD, a dirt and contamination type. What happened is, like, she always feels that, like she gets dirty. Even though she washes her hands, she feels that it's not properly washed. She just repeatedly washes it for 15, 16, 17 times. And this is the type of OCD. And for this reason, she's not being able to have the intimacy with her husband. And for that, her husband, brought her to me, and they were on the verge of divorce. And then I explained that she just has OCD, which needs to be corrected. And after OCD gets corrected, definitely you can have your personal intimacy and all the stuff. And then they understood. And just because of that OCD, you see, the husband is not understanding that her wife has OCD. He took it in that shape that maybe she lost interest in me. Maybe she doesn't love me anymore. But it's just because she developed OCD at age 27. And if you correct OCD, then there's no need to worry. So this is something that also sometimes increases our stress. So stress originates from three things. And when we approach a client or a person, we always need to understand these three things. Like, does he or she have an external part or external stress? Does he or she have an internal issue? Or does he or she have anything like psychiatry? The next one. So why clients don't improve? See, there are a few doctor factors and few clients. I'll just go quick through this. Sometimes doctors make wrong diagnosis. They often don't refer the patients because in our country, also in Southeast Asia, sometimes the psychiatrists only prescribe medicines and they don't refer to counselors. And sometimes counselors don't refer to psychiatrists. So a holistic approach is actually needed. And sometimes a psychiatrist tries to treat everything. Like a psychiatrist, there are difference of training, because I don't see child psychiatry cases because I'm not trained well enough in child psychiatry. I mostly deal adolescent cases and adult cases and substance use cases. That's my specialization. But sometimes in Southeast Asian countries, also in our countries, as there's only 300 psychiatrists in a country where there are 180 million people, it's very difficult to for us to work, because we need to see patients even if we are not highly specialized on those things. So these are doctor factors why sometimes clients don't improve. And also, if we come to client factors, what are the main causes? Sometimes clients want a very quick fix. They might have huge trauma, huge PTSD, huge anxiety, but they just come and expect to get healed in one session or just by one medicine. So this is a problem. The second is they don't continue holistic treatment. Like they only like counseling or they only like medicines and they don't continue the holistic treatment. The third part is sometimes they play the victim role. So they don't want to improve anything in their life. They just want to blame, and if someone just blames, it's not helpful for them. So when a person goes into that mood, we have our utmost patience, we give empathy, love, and we try to prolong the sessions to make him or her understand that, okay, it might be that you need more sessions, more time to talk, but after that, you have to plan for a beneficial future, because blaming this life, blaming your parents, blaming your family, blaming your partner, ultimately will not help you at the end of the day. And the fourth is, if we don't work in personality, like the traits and attributes that I have already told. If we just focus on the trauma or the external source, but we don't work in personality, then it's not like, it doesn't help with holistic treatment. So on that note, I would also like to say that treatment has to have a cultural perspective too, because in our country and Southeast Asian countries, like there are a few family issues which might be very foreign, to people who are living in Australia or the Western world, because in our culture we give, I would say, extra emphasis to elders, which is sometimes, I would say, very toxic or very inappropriate. But in Australia or in Western world, it's a good thing that it's not always, listen to. So these are things. In our marital systems, like there are very inappropriate things or cultural things, which is sometimes not well understood by people if you don't live in that culture. So there was a famous psychiatrist like Brian Jervis. He used to be a very good psychiatrist in UK. He was very good in his work, and after working 10 years in UK, he got shifted to Brunei, and he was working in Brunei for 6 months, and then he started to realize that he was very good at his work in UK, but when he traveled to Brunei, he was not being able to connect well with his patient. So he then wrote a very good book on cultural psychiatry, and he told that the culture of Brunei was very different from the culture of UK. So he got to know about the cultural perspectives of Brunei, their spirituality, their family patterns and everything. And after that, after spending a year in Brunei, then again he performed very well as a psychiatrist. So depression is a thing like, there are lots of taboo, with depression. But depression is not normal sadness. It's something more than sadness. If it's like 3P, it's like persistent, pervasive, and predominant sadness. So persistent is like more than 14 days. Predominant is more than 12 hours in a day you remain sad. And pervasive is like wherever you go, whatever you do, you still feel sad. You still feel that nothing makes you happy. So it's the inability to experience happiness is what is depression, and it has to be there for more than 2 weeks. And not only sadness, depression has a lot of other features. Like a depressed person, if he's clinically depressed, he will feel that nobody loves me, or everyone hates me. He will not want to get up from bed to go to school or go to office or go to university, because he will just want to stay away from everything. He will want to stay aloof. He will omit all the self-care things. He will not take care of anything that he needs to take care of. His grooming will be significantly hampered. Also, he will feel that he's good for nothing. He will feel very tired. He will be irritable. His weight can go down, or it can increase at least 10% every month. His anger issues will increase. Self-control will decrease. So he'll probably refer to self-harming himself or herself. So these are the symptoms. If it's present for more than 14 days, we call it clinical depression. In normal sadness, no one will experience these thoughts like I'm good for nothing, or he won't have insomnia, he won't get irritated, he won't omit self-care issues. So sadness is very different from clinical depression, and clinical depression is an epidemic right now. The WHO is saying that within 2030, depression is going to be the leading disorder that will create disabilities among people. It's now the second most disability creating disorder among everything, not cancer, not AIDS, not any infectious disease. It's depression what that's causing harm to a lot of people. And if we don't treat depression, 15% people will die. So if someone has clinical depression and if we don't treat them, then among them, approx 15% people will commit suicide. So it's very scary. Depression can kill us. So as we don't have a lot of time, but I will just try to give you a few things that might help, day-to-day, the management of anxiety, depression. So this is a very important philosophy I tell always to people who suffer from anxiety. So like you might this is a thing like they always tell us like a lot of thoughts are popping into our mind, a lot of things. So what I tell them is always try to control the things that are under your control. Okay, so do not try to control what you can't control. Suppose in our country, a lot of people come to me and they say that we are very sad about African people when we see the faces or the people of Afghanistan or a lot of people who are very suffering from poverty all over the world. So they are like very sad and depressed. What I tell them is that you will not be able to go to those countries at this moment. You won't be able to go to Africa or the other places. So thinking about these things brings no changes to your life and to their life. So it's not helpful for you. Rather, in our country, there are lots of poor people. And every day, if you have ability, you can help 2 people. So if you are always thinking about people who you have no access to, then you're just wasting your time and energy, which is a true emotion, but you're just wasting it. And you can invest that energy or redirect that energy in helping the people who are poor in your country. So this is something that we can practice a lot. Like a lot of things come into our minds, we can just write it down, and we can have just 2 pages. In 1 page, we can just write like what is under our control and what is not under our control. Because if we try to control the things which are not under our control, then we lose control over things which are under our control. A lot of people think okay, that man or that guy said bullied me, like he insulted me, he's like this, he's like that, how can he say this, how can he act like this? But we have no control on other person's behavior or other person's, we don't have the same parents, we don't have the same values, we don't have the same teaching, same schooling. So it's their issue, it's not your issue. Rather, we can think in this manner that what I think about myself or what my creator thinks about myself. Because these 2 things are within my control. What others think about me is not under my control, but what I think about myself and what my creator thinks about myself may be under my control. So let's think about those issues. I can give you a lot of examples regarding this, but it's a very simple technique of how we can control day-to-day anxiety. In anger management, there are lots of things to say because anger is a huge issue. But if I say it very simplistically, there are a few thoughts that are associated with anger. We have unhealthy expectation from ourselves that I should do this, I should have been like this. From the other people, like he should be like that, he should do like that. Or from the world, like the world, why is this world like this? The world is unfair. Anger. The people who are angry always have always have a narcissist component, and they have a revengeful mindset. So if we work in their ego, it's pretty easy to correct the anger issues. So anger is a significant problem I think that we day-to-day face, and through basic counseling and working on their ego and negative thoughts, we can correct anger issues. There are 4 criteria of a resilient human. This is very important when we work with PTSD patients. Very important. And through my clinical experience, I always try to tell them these 4 things. These are things which sometimes we are born with, or we see our parents or teachers, and we are a bit more resilient than others. But it's not anything genetic. We can develop these four things. So there are four criteria of a resilient human being. The first one is a resilient man or a woman. They understand that adversity is part of life. So they kind of wait for adverse times. Like we might be going through a good time now, but they understand that any day, at any moment, uh, adversity can come. So they wait for it. So there are two different people. One, like when they're in a good shape in their life, they think that life is going to be going like this all through my life. So he's not prepared for the adversity. And another person, he's living a good life, but he's always like prepared. He knows that although I'm living a good life, something might happen. Like my mother may have cancer, or suddenly my job can go away, or suddenly my kid can go through something which I didn't want. So they're like prepared. So the mindset helps us in life. So we need to understand that any adversity can befall us at any time. That mindset helps us. And resilient people are always like this. They're happy with their lives, but they're always prepared for the next adversity. The second is they are good at choosing carefully where they select their attention. So, resilient people always, even though a negative thing happens in their life, they always try to extract a positive thing in their life. So I was talking to a woman. She was 52, and she came to me. She had a daughter, and who just suddenly died due to drowning, and the daughter was 11 years old, and she was like very sad, very sad and depressed. But in the counseling session, she said something very interesting. So she was a very spiritual lady. She said that, my name is Dr. Ashraf. So Dr. Ashraf, I'm very sad. I'm crying in front of you. But whenever I think that my daughter went to God at 11, she was very innocent, very lovely. She had no sins according to her belief. So she counseled herself like this, like her daughter is now in a better place according to her, understanding of life or understanding of values. This is what a strong, resilient person does. Although she is in tears, she's like very sad. She's still trying, according to her values, to extract something positive from it. So that's what resilient people do. Like suppose a resilient people has a breakup or a divorce, they think that okay, this partner made my life very toxic or difficult. Maybe my next partner will be better than this, or maybe my single life will be better than this. So they, even through the sadness, they try to think positives. It's not like inappropriate positive things, but very appropriate positive things. They at least have that mindset. But what non-resilient people do is they make a small thing even big. Like if they have a breakup, they tend to think, oh, like yeah, one man has left me, so now I won't be loved by anyone in the world. They make a thing exaggerated. This is something that a resilient man or woman will never do. They will try at most according to his or her values to extract the positives from the negative that happened to her life. The third thing is a resilient people always ask himself that what I'm doing is helpful or harmful for me. So I can, like, maybe I'm going to bed at 2, maybe I'm eating or doing something which is not helpful, maybe I'm not exercising. Like, they don't run in autopilot. They always ask themselves, they're like very accountable to them. They ask every single step of their life, like what they're eating, what they're doing, or how they're behaving, their lifestyle, everything. They ask themselves that is it helpful or is it harmful? And they try to correct it. So resilient people never run through an autopilot. They always are accountable to themselves. And the fourth thing is that resilient people understand that human beings are fundamentally powerless. Like this makes them empowered basically. So we have no control over a lot of things. If we just look at COVID, we could do nothing, right? but just accepting it and just trying to survive, through going through online offices or wearing masks or washing our hands or creating distance. So when COVID came, life became very difficult for us. A lot of doctors, a lot of colleagues over there in Bangladesh died. Two of my family members died. It was very painful for a lot of us, but still we tried to survive. And what COVID taught us, massively is like human beings fundamentally are powerless, and uh, it it will never happen that what we want will not always happen in life. A lot of things will happen, but a lot of things are not under our control. And this should not make us sad. This should just bring us closer to the reality of this life. This will make us more empowered, and this will make us prepared, for the next adversity. So these are the four things, four criteria that we can all develop if we want to be resilient. This helps a lot in PTSD clients. The first, I'm just repeating it, that they are always prepared for the next adversity. They enjoy their life, their present life, but they are always prepared for the next adversity. The second one is they try to bring the positives from any negatives. They strive according to their values. The third is they're very self-accountable. They don't run autopilot. They're always asking themselves about their actions and behavior. And the fourth one is they understand that they are powerless, and this reduces their ego. This makes them calm and humble, and it helps them be more resilient. This is the thing, 8 pillars, which I say we from Bachelor we always try to like ask these things in a person's life. These are like 8 pillars, and like if we have a building, like it has a foundation, right? So these are like the foundation. So in a building, if one pillar is absent, like it will not like like break away. But if 3 of them are absent, like the building will not be there anymore. So I always check if these 8 things are there, in a person's life after treating the depression, anxiety, or PTSD, whatever. The first one is a job. Everyone needs a job, because if someone does not have a job, his biological rhythm is not good. So job is very important. And in Bangladesh, and working with a lot of people, we try to educate people on how to get a better job or how to write a better CV. And if you don't have a job, and if you are very conscientious, and if you're a bit neurotic, you will always be clinically depressed. Okay. So the second is a purpose. We all need a purpose to life. It can be a spiritual purpose. It can be a non-spiritual purpose. And we can work for women's rights, animals' rights, children's rights, orphans' rights. Whatever we do, I think we all need a purpose today. Because if we have a purpose, our root gets strengthened. The third is we need friends. We don't need a lot of friends, but at least 1 or 2 or 3 of friends really helps us, because when we go to our friends, we become very lively, especially our school friends and college friends. Introverts won't have much friends, 1 or 2 very close. Extroverts will have a bit more, but at least we should have friends in life. It's very important. Fourth is relationships. A stable relationship usually helps people, because when we have unstable relationships, it sometimes hurts our mental health. And a cohort study of 75 years says that healthy relationships are very important in our lives if we want to maintain happiness at the end of our lives. The fifth one is any kind of health issues. If we have diabetes or hypertension or thyroid issues, we have to control it. If any health issues gets uncontrolled for more than 6 months, we may suffer from depression or anxiety. The sixth one is removing addictions from our life. If you have any addictions, it can be any kind of addictions, we have to remove it. And behavioral addictions are also like very common nowadays. So we have to remove any kind of addictions. The seventh one is behavioral factors. That is, we have to have a good sleep life. We have to exercise at least 10 to 15 minutes daily, and we have to take nutritious food. So if you are not doing that, one of the pillars are missing. And then eighth one is the second life. The second life means doing something just for yourself. Like if you're a teacher or if you're a psychiatrist, whatever, you need to do something which you do for your own pleasure. Like I regularly play football, so When I play football, I forget, my work, my family, and everything down, all the stress that I have. It needs to be something active, not passive. Like you can't watch Netflix and say that I have a second life. Watching Netflix is absolutely fine, but you have to do something active. It can be sports, it can be painting, it can be traveling, it can be anything. But you have to love it, and you need to adapt it in your life. So these are the 8 things a lot of people are missing. It's okay to miss 1 or 2 because we are not perfect as human beings, so we might have different choices too. But at least 3 of them should not be missing in our lives. So at least 3 of them should not be missing in our lives. So when we work with clients, we always try to ensure that these 8 pillars are there in their lives. And these are the different form of clinical assistance that we provide. These are basically, I would say, our job. The CBT, the problem-solving therapy, the psychodynamics, the dialectical, ERP, mindfulness, crisis intervention, and a lot of other things. And in a few cases, also medications are needed. But from LifeSpeed, we try to give the least amount of medication needed, and definitely we try to practice evidence-based medicine. That's slide. Okay, so that's that basically. It was wonderful to speak in front of you. I hope I could share my perspective, and I would love to hear from you after my talk in the groups or sessions. It was a pleasure to present in front of you. Thank you so much.
Okay, we might just have 2 questions. So, is there any questions?
Yes.
No? Right, thank you. Thank you, man. We don't have a question.
I have one question.
Okay.
What is
Exposure response prevention. It's used to treat obsessive compulsive disorders. Mostly, the case I say that someone is washing hands, you treat it through the air.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to go into groups. Not going into groups.
Right.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, just want to acknowledge that we have another special guest, Councillor John Raven, who is here today. And of course, you've been noticing on the media that there's elections coming. So I think we're going for the mayor. And of course, John's a friend of the mosque. So we'd just like to invite John maybe to say a couple of words, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Travis. I was not expected to speak, so I'll just be speechless for a moment. My name is Councillor John Raven. I would love to be the next Mayor of Logan, but many of you in this room already know me because I'm a huge supporter of not only the faith community, but also the multicultural community all over Logan and South East Queensland. The reason why is because before I was a councillor, I ran my own business. And I found that some of the hardest working people who were the most reliable were people from who had come from overseas, from migrants. Because we did really hard work. We did asbestos removal and demolition. And often when I would talk to people from my community, young men in particular, they would want to work in an air-conditioned excavator cab, and they wouldn't want to have to get sweaty, or they wanted to work on a computer. And we didn't have that kind of work. The work we did was what I call honest work, so you get out there, you work hard, and you get paid really well for it. And I found that, especially from the Pacific Islander community, and from the African communities, the Burundian, the Congolese communities in particular, and also from the Arab communities, we got amazing workers who actually thought about problems differently than we did. But with that came some challenges. We're talking about mental health today, and I'll tell you a really quick story. In 2011, a whole bunch of, there was a big house fire, and a lot of islanders died. There was 9 people in that house, and it was full of asbestos. My business was contracted by Logan City Council to go and pull that down. It had already been cleared of any remains, any sensitive issues, and so I just went in there and started doing my job, which was to make it safe for the community. So I had to stop the asbestos from moving around and spray it with a really strong glue. So I'm in there and I'm spraying away, and I've got my biosuit on, and I can feel my phone ringing in my pocket. It's a 2-man job. One man feeds the glue into the Ellis spray gun, and I sit there and spray it. And phone's ringing, go back out, take my suit off, decontaminate. And I said to Tainer, who was my right-hand man and a young Maori man with a family, said to him, I'll call the glue and I'll take this call on my earpiece, you go in and spray. I didn't think for 2 seconds about what I was doing when I said that to a young Islander man, go into a room where 9 people that live the same lifestyle that you do, have the same cultural connection as you do, go in there and spray their house. I didn't, because I was just, it was an intensely insensitive moment, culturally and as a person. So I'm on the phone, and I'm pouring the glue, and the glue's going too fast. That means he's not targeting anything, he's just holding the trigger. And so when I went in to find him, sorry, it's a bit emotional because I still know what it looked like, he was staring at the bed where a child had passed away, and he was spraying just the floor, and it was on his next time. So I dropped the ball on that one because my responsibility as his boss and as his mate was to look after his well-being. And sometimes when you're dealing with people who do come from a different cultural background, there's additional sensitivities that I, as a white Australian, don't think of naturally. Right? After that moment, I was very mindful of it. And for the rest of that job, I looked after everyone's well-being, and I made a different mistake though by the end, because the people I focused on then were all of my staff who came from a Pacific Islander background. The people I didn't think of were what I call the white bread Aussies. So they were doing the demolition with machines, and they were seeing exactly the same sorts of things he was seeing, except they were watching everything as they pulled it down to make sure that it wasn't flying off, it wasn't doing anything dangerous. So at the end of that job, a whole bunch of, if you've seen guys who do demolition, they're not shrinking violets, they're big boys with big beards, and it's a big job. So when we finished, we went to the pub, and we all sat down, and within 15 minutes I had a whole table full of men crying because of what they'd said. Because while I was really careful after that to look after my Islander staff, I did not think of the rest of my staff and what they were doing either. The level of resilience was their level of resilience. So it taught me a really valuable lesson. I'd only had my business for about 5 years at that point, and we'd only just started getting big enough to have large crews of staff working for us, and people that I didn't necessarily know. Like, I wasn't employing my friends anymore, I was employing strangers. Taught me a really valuable lesson as a boss, but also as a human, that while it's fine for me to think about my resilience in the context of trauma and what's challenging, it's far more important to walk in someone else's shoes and have that empathy where you can understand what someone else is going through and think about it through their lens. I never made a mistake like that again. So I made one mistake where I didn't consider the cultural significance of what I was doing, another mistake where I didn't consider the mental health significance of what I was doing. That I only needed to learn those lessons once, and all of the challenging jobs we did after that, we did a lot. I made sure that we did pre-starts where one of the risks we were managing was trauma from what you were experiencing on the job, and then debriefs before we let anyone get anywhere near a beer at the end of the job to make sure that they process what they'd seen and check in every step of the way. My business partner was much older Kiwi than I was, 20 years older than me from the Wairarapa, and he thought all of that was nonsense until he saw those blokes sitting around the table crying in a pub in the CBD, and then he realised that it was serious business, that we have to take care of people's mental health. So this is really important. Thank you very much for what you've shared today. Sorry I couldn't be here for the entire presentation. Please come up and have a yarn afterwards. I'd love to share more stories and hear what you're trying to do to manage your mental health. I'm not managing my mental health at the moment. I'm running election campaign, so I just keep running until the 16th of March. So my mental health strategy is 45 days. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, thank you. Now, I just did want to say, when when you're with an expert, when they do a very deep and meaningful presentation, but it comes across light and it's easy to absorb. So I was thinking that as you were speaking, and I think it was one of the best talks I think I've heard in years. So I just want to thank you for that. Now we do have some experts, so is there anyone else, like a few people just said a few gems along the way, is there anyone else that's just got a few words, some gems that is consistent with what we're saying, that could possibly add just an observation that you might have? We've got a few practitioners here. Is there anyone that would like to add anything, do you think, that we've missed out on today?
I just like to add something. First of all, I'm very thankful to the speakers and all the presentation that is given by Dr. Shasad. As a lot of community people are here, I'm an international student, I just want to add few things that actually I observe around myself. If we talk about the mental stability, it is a cycle that is start from the birth of a person and the end of a person. According to my belief, I am not just endorsing it with some, you can say, so statistical calculations. Uh, the thing that is actually increasing in Australia due to the research made by the well-reputed researchers, the anxiety rate is the maximum in this country, the West Australia. It was at 18.1%, although the equivalent is the highest one in depression with the 27.1%. And the thing is that the people who are doing the work and they are just putting their babies in a babysitting, in some care, this is the actual, you can say, the initial stage of a children through which they are actually feeling a loneliness, which is actually an initial stage of the depression of a person or a baby. Because we are so stuck with our work assignments, the mother is going for other tasks, the father is rushing to fulfill the financial task. So I believe the first circle, which is from the baby to the old age one, is starting is very initial. This is the first stage. After that, when the child is grow up and went to the school, a same story is stand like that. Parents don't have a time to look after the studies and the status of the child. Same is the case with the mother, for example. She's a housewife. She's just thinking, my husband is not like me. He's not taking me a full time. Maybe he has some extramarital affairs or this and that, and she's just putting a lot of pressure on her mind. Although if we talk about a man, he is completely sincere and he is doing his work with very full dedication, but still he is suffering from an external stress that is actually discussed by Dr. Arshad. So main thing is that whether we have a lot of people with the community, that's a we talk a very lovely story, isn't it? The main thing is that the communities are multicultural and they are supporting, but unfortunately we are not pinching that points that need to be rectified. A student that is going to be a schooling to a university, then it's going to be a new pressure, and still the parents are moving to the employment opportunities. They have to told that I have to move some foreign country, I have some promotions, and father is getting that I have to lease the house, I have a lot of pressure. And in these scenarios, we are continuously ignoring the teenage factor, which is the most sensitive due to this stage of the life that adult is going to be adopted by the smoking, by the alcohol, by the bad company. Even they are going to say that we are now a teenager, we are reaching the age of 18, but rather we are parents. You don't have any right to say, did you remember that you give me any time for my education, for my physical appearance? So this is the things that every person in the family is facing some kind of a mental illness. This is the factor which need to be identified by the communities and we need to be rectified. Being an international student, I saw many students which are struggling with the financial assistance. But unfortunately, a community is just focusing on the nationals or PR holders and the New Zealand persons. If we talk that we are moving for a multicultural, then we have to own each and every person with EEO, equal employment opportunities. And these, if you people remember that it's just a 1 week back, a vocational education course is announced by the community. And I just went for it and they are saying, so, we are not giving these free courses to the students. So these kinds need to be addressed and controlled because every person is going through the stress in every age and it's not be highlighted that, for example, I am standing over here, you are just saying me a normal person. There is a no mental instability and there is a no, you can say, some kind of abnormality. But all of us, we are 20 or whether we are going to be 25 in a hall, everyone has some kind of mental illness. and it's true whether we are going to accept it or not. So I just request the community holders over here, the competent authorities, that they have to put a keen interest on these points. So we, like a full family, whether we are going through any kind of a distress, there must be a ignoring the discrimination of a gender, religion, age, and we must help each and every person. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you like the more recommendations and thank you so much.
Yes.
Amongst this broad landscape of mental health and all the different professionals and services that are available, I'd really like to acknowledge peer workers. For my journey, my own journey through domestic violence and the aftermath that followed that experience, it was women who had walked that path before me that were the most support and the most helpful that I found. There's lots of counselling involved in lots of the legal services, but knowing that women had gone through that journey and come out the other side to some degree, a few steps ahead of me just in some cases, was what gave me hope, I guess. And it seems to be the need for that is so much greater now because we do have severe lack of mental health professionals with this growing cohort of people who are now coming into the space of needing assistance, needing help. So I think it's very valuable to acknowledge peer workers and support.
Yes, that's a great point. And we will probably have volunteers and mentors as we go through. Like a lot of the other people come and help. And that's great. Great idea. All right, now we're going to give the guys, the rock stars, a crest. We're going to present the crest. Have you got that? Got the crests. So, we'll get, yes, we might get Rob. Rob. What's it? Sorry, Rob, is it okay if we get you to present the
and then I'm going to have to run.
Okay, cool.
I've got to back at the Gold Coast for it 7.
All right.
That's how we get the Gold Coast.
Oh, I'm on the train. Yeah.
So this one is for Jan.
Okay, we all happy? Thanks.
I hope you like it. Please take it.
What did you learn today?
It's going to be offices.
What?
It's going to be offices. I just split it. I believe so.
Okay, thank you again, and please join us for the food.
Now, well, it's time to have some breakfast. Everyone pick up them.